I'm very excited for this Booze in the Holy Land trip we've got coming up early March 2022. And I'm Drew Kaplan, JewishDrinking.com founder. And this really all started actually with Josh Mann here, who created the Jews and Booze group, really just because of, you know, we had a conversation on one of the episodes.
But I'd really love to put together a trip to Israel, focused on the Israeli alcohol industry.
So would I. And one thing led to another, and here we are.
Sometimes things work out in a timely way for a reason. But two of my passions in life have always been Israel and whiskey. And so I finally found an opportunity to be able to combine them and bring a lot of people to Israel. So I'm excited.
Yeah. And Ari got connected. I'm sorry, Josh got connected with Ari, who is a man of many talents and many hats. So Ari, would you like to describe yourself?
Sure. I'm a whiskey professional. So that wears many hats. So I farm grain, I distill. I buy whiskey and blend it. I buy whiskey and sell it. And prior to being involved with whiskey, I was involved with wine. And I lived in Israel for years. When I was a baby, I lived in Israel after high school. I've studied in Israel. And I've had an opportunity of watching the wine industry and the beer industry develop in Israel over the past 20 or so years. So when I heard a couple of years ago that the distilling industry was starting to take off, I've been keeping an eye on that segment for a long time. Really, really excited. I have been very excited to see the innovation and the stylistic choices that are being made by the distillers. So how much are they using European or Scottish or Irish traditions versus American traditions of distilling? And to what extent are they bringing their own perspectives? And how is the land influencing the spirits that they're making and the decisions that they're making? So, my perspective it has a lot to do. And one thing that I'm really excited to find out in talking to the producers over there is, what is their thought process? Is they're establishing an Israeli style? What does that mean to them? I'm excited for that on one end. And then on the other end, I'm really excited to take part in the creation of a channel for Israeli spirits to ultimately end up at people's homes in the United States and everywhere. So being involved in that whole process is very exciting.
Absolutely. So I know I'm in addition to all these things that Josh and I had put together, we thought, this trip will be for aficionados, for enthusiasts of whatever, whiskey, wine, beer, etc., and really developing this connection to Israel and also being exposed to what has been going on. And especially since one of the things that I find fascinating every time I travel to Israel is how much it's changed in really just a couple of years, especially for people who haven't gone in 5-10 years. It's light years ahead of wherever it was. And that's certainly true. But one of the things, and Ari, we've been talking about, has been also people actively involved in the industry in outside of Israel will find this incredibly fascinating. And also there are business opportunities that can be developed, whether on the importing side or other. And one other thing you mentioned, Ari, was also about catalyzing a network of people interested.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, Josh's group in particular, but the wave of enthusiasm around spirits in general over the past 10, 15 years has created little pockets of people getting involved, creating tastings, being together, sharing experiences, creating experiences. And it's very interesting to see that play out within the Jewish community, particularly with groups like Josh's.
Yeah, which it's been around for less than a year now, and yet it's already gone. It's not only membership and engagement, but also all the various barrel picks you've been doing, right, Josh? Which are, by the way, I have to mention, anybody not familiar with the barrel picks that Josh does, which are incredibly tasty, as anybody who's watched our episode, the episode I did of my podcast with him, but also they are incredibly clever and hilarious. Very Jewishly named, right, Josh?
Yeah, and actually, one of the things I'm really excited about on this trip is the opportunity to do at least one in-person group barrel pick, either at Milk and Honey or one of the other distilleries, because I think that'll be a fun thing, an experience that will be shared that will be extremely unique. Probably nobody else really has done it in person like that, and and it'll be a good memento in a few months when it's bottled and brought back to the States. So that's going to be a fun and really exclusive experience.
Absolutely. So it's the literal take homes, the physical take homes, as well as, the various insights I'll be providing as far as drinking in Jewish life, tradition, and history, but also the things that people are able to connect with on the trip, conversations, and who knows what can develop out of those. That's entirely unplanned, and that's a little bit more, I don't know, it'll just happen, right? People will talk. I think people are also hungry or thirsty for having in-person experiences after the last 20 months of not really so much travel and certainly not group travel.
If I were a brewer or a winemaker or someone that aspired to be a distiller in Israel, and I was holding back on my ambition for one reason or another, but then I learned about groups like this, it could provide a little push. So I actually think that organizing this group and putting this out in the world and hopefully making it a repeatable thing is going to give confidence and inspire potentially more distillers, more manufacturers in Israel to bring their products online. They're going to know that there's something to do with them, and there's people around the world that are interested, and then they're going to have to figure out how they fit into the local picture, and it's going to create innovation. It's going to create unique and compelling spirits.
Right. I really like that take. How it will help.
There's a feedback loop.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about how it'll help the whiskey industry or more broadly brewing and so forth within Israel and developing. I mean, I really just was thinking about the exposure to the American or just non-Israeli audience of the products being offered.
I think what's very unique about Israel is you really have a lot of these microclimates in a very small area, so that it adds a factor to the distilling and brewing and winemaking process that it sort of doesn't exist in other places. And I'm interested to learn how they play with things like elevation and temperature and things that you could do in Israel that you really can't do elsewhere.
Yeah, and also the direct access to distillers, vintners, brewers, etc., who are there and having, I think, just even being able to engage and ask questions directly. Obviously fostering, more of a connection for the end consumers back stateside, but also just having that opportunity. And who knows, maybe it'll also be for people in the industry a way to directly engage and get consumer feedback as well.
All around, there's many reasons to do this trip. The timing is right. We all want to travel. We all want to stretch our legs a little bit.
Right, and especially since just this month, Israel announced that it's a lot easier to get into the country. Serological tests are no longer required after deplaning. So they're also, making it easier to come into the country now, but still being safe with COVID testing and all that. It's not just about drinking. We're not only drinking, we're also having fine culinary opportunities, experiences, and not just going to restaurants, but also chefs cooking food in front of us and having that opportunity to engage, as well as fine accommodations for lodging as well. So it's not, we're not slumming it on a kibbutz or a hostel. It'll be fine accommodations.
This is going to be far off the beaten birthright trail, you might say.
Absolutely. This is, I don't think anybody should mistake this for a birthright trip. This is far from a birthright trip. And if not only if someone's been on birthright, but if someone's been to Israel even 10, 20 times, I think this trip will offer opportunities, as Josh mentions off the beaten path. It'll be opportunities we've never seen before, in addition to the direct engagement, both culinarily and also drinking wise, but having really cool opportunities, as grownups, as adults, to experience Israel like we have not experienced it before. I'm excited. You guys are excited. It's just a few months away. I think registration closes early January. So we've already got several people signed up. I'm excited. So, l'chaim.